Today...
No, you did.
I did. Welcome to the Charlotte Buzz, where we drink beer from local breweries while telling stories about the neighborhoods they're from. I'm Chrissy, and this is Dru.
And today, we're drinking the Cafe Latte Stout from Pilot Brewing in Plaza.
The Plaza.
It is their second version, at least, of the Cafe Latte Stout. This one features a medium roast house blend from Undercurrent Coffee.
I like the coffee. It looks like I'm pouring cold brew right now. Just frothier cold brew, like a nitro.
Yeah. They're like right across the road from whatchamacallit. We saw them the other day from
Are you talking a coffee place or are you talking Moo and Brew?
yeah, the coffee place. Where did Common Market? Remember when we parked at that weird where you have to back in spots? And it's like right across the street. We saw it the other day.
Yes. Oh, Undercurrent is.
Yes.
I thought you meant Pilot, and that's why I was very confused.
No.
Yes. Undercurrent is just across from Common Market in Plaza, yes.
Yeah, this Pilot's from behind Snooze.
Snooze. We need to eat there. This smells really delicious of coffee, by the way, for anybody who does not have smell-o-vision, because, you know, that's a thing. But
It is, they use cocoa nibs and just enough lactose. This medium-bodied milk stout is great in any season.
it is a weird mix of, like, coffee, chocolate, and beer.
Yeah.
Like, that's exactly the three flavors that hit you in the face. And none of them are too, like, overdone. And I can't decide if the flavor that lingers on my tongue is more coffee or chocolate. But beer, I would say, is almost like the hidden flavor of the three.
Yeah. I can see that.
Kind of just like a spiked mocha latte.
Yeah, as far as, like, milk stouts go, it is pretty light.
Yes.
I believe it's not.
I do agree. It's not real, like, it's thick for a beer, but it's not, like, and I say that coming from, like, IPA land of, like, when you think beer and think more, like, thin and light, it's definitely thicker than that, but in terms of, I don't know, I'm not describing it well at all.
Yes.
It's definitely lighter for this style of beer, but it's not thin.
Medium-bodied, one would say.
There's just this drip left in here, so I'm going to top you off with it.
Okay.
Anything else to say about this beer?
Other than it'll drink.
It will drink. It's not an IPA, guys. Look at me go. But
Growing.
It's coffee, so
Yeah.
really, how can you go wrong with it? So, Pilot Brewing, while I get my iPad to work here, because you know me and I'm not a technological person, it says the creative digital technology owner, but you know. Pilot Brewing opened just over a year now. They opened last August, and it is run by a husband and wife team, Jeff and Rachel, and she is actually the brewer, which I think is, I mean, I know we have Bold Missy, which is a female-led brewery and all of that, but generally we read all the things of the husband being the brewer and the wife helping the, sort of the business side. And she's the one that has been a brewer for quite some time. She has worked under brewers in Colorado, brewers in Virginia, worked under Noda Brewery, several things. She's been professionally a brewer for at least 6 years, but has been in the training phases for longer than that. And finally decided time to branch out on her own and wanted to focus more on small batch and microbrewery things. Mm-hmm. And so her husband is a pilot, and they use a, quote, co-pilot system. And that is, where they got their name, this double entendre on that. And they consider themselves the neighborhood nano brewery.
Okay.
And I guess they are basically committed to keeping this small little, they're not really focused on mass producing and like distribution and all that kind of stuff. It's just they want to be able to do small batches, experimental styles, experimental recipes, and just keep working with all these locally sourced ingredients. Like we said, coffee is from basically just down the street. Mm-hmm. And so they're just trying to focus on that local sourcing of ingredients and then maximizing community involvement through the production and the distribution. I say distribution, but like the involvement of people within their nano brewery. And that's about it.
Cool.
They wanted to make sure it was less of a big, profound business and more just, this is what we love to do, and we want to be able to just keep it fun and light and do what we want to do.
Nice.
And that's
I think
Pilot.
they were there the other day when we...
Yeah, they definitely were. The gentleman who served us is definitely the husband, and the woman who put the crowlers together was definitely our head brewer man.
Well, there you go. Mm-hmm. I think this is another one where we were there at least opening weekend.
We were there opening day, yeah.
Opening day, yeah.
It was packed, but it's a very small space, so that was just nature of it. But it was cool.
Yeah.
Nice little corner. Parking sucks, and I've continued to read more and more articles about how parking sucks. And there's recently been this new company hired by that apartment complex right there. Where they are like staking out the parking lots, and the second you park and either don't enter one of those businesses, they will boot your car, or they have watched people go to those businesses, spend several hours there, and then like walk across the street to window shop and come right back and boot their car because they have left the property. And it's like legal and everybody's freaking out about it. And I keep seeing more and more articles pop up because local businesses like Smooth Monkey and stuff are like putting up, I think it's that parking lot actually, that big.
The one across the street?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That big is what's kind of doing it. And so all these local businesses have put up signs like the bullies across the street will boot your car, don't park there. But so it's getting a little interesting in that neck of the woods.
Yeah, they do have a large parking lot right there.
Yeah, they don't like people parking there.
And you never see it full.
Mm-hmm. Who knows?
Yeah, strange.
Yeah.
People pay for parking. Why don't they just...
Yeah, sell it off.
Yeah.
No idea. Rent it out, whatever.
Yeah.
No idea. But...
Okay.
So, going back to Plaza Midwood. Been there a few times.
For the 43rd time.
Yeah. We're going to have to start allocating Plaza Midwood time to Uptown or something. But...
Yeah, sheesh. We've done Plaza Midwood a few times, I do believe. And every time I'm researching my topic, I see Streetcar Suburb. Mm-hmm. And I just assumed that it means they had a streetcar and they were a suburb. And that is how it is.
Oh!
But I figured I'd talk about that streetcar.
Okay.
Because there is a little bit of drama involved.
Ooh. They can't get away from the vehicle drama in this town.
Yeah.
That was a good segue. I didn't know that was coming.
Oh, yeah? Mm-hmm. So Plaza Midwood had an issue that hindered early growth. Unlike the neighborhoods of Dilworth and Elizabeth, Plaza Midwood didn't have a bridge that crossed over the railroad tracks. So the railroad track that we're talking about is Central Avenue and Hawthorne. Okay.
Is that with the Seaboard Railroad?
It is.
I have a slight commentary of this in my story, actually. It's super not related to any of the streetcar stuff, but it was just like adding factor to some things.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it causes long waits, and people didn't like that. So they didn't live there.
Shocker.
Dilworth had their streetcar bridge, so they could just go from uptown down to Dilworth and never have to stop. Yeah. So Plaza Midwood early developers like Paul Chatham with Chatham Estates on the plaza.
The plaza.
And the projectors of the planned Charlotte Country Club that we've talked about before approached trolley owner Edward Dilworth Latta.
Hey, we've talked about him too.
I feel like we have, yes, a few times probably. And just wanted to extend his service out to Plaza Midwood. And he was like, nah, fam. So it was gonna extend his track out 2 miles. And I think, yeah, that trolley stopped at Central Avenue and Hawthorne.
Yeah.
So like either way, people had to stop there, cross, do whatever, run across
they
train
just like
tracks.
blocked himself in. Yeah.
And it's not like nowadays where like you might get a train that comes through there like once a month. This was like very busy. Went to Monroe, Gastonia, Wilmington, like carrying freight all over the place. So he said, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't think it'll really help me out any.
Business and whatnot.
And so, no, he didn't want to do it. So Paul Chatham was like, you know what?
Do we have a general time frame?
1910-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, I may have skipped over that, but
you're good.
1910-ish.
Okay. So Chatham.
Yeah, Paul Chatham, is like, I got these estates on the plaza. I'll just I'll build one myself. So he went before the City Board of Aldermans to request a franchise to build his own streetcar line. And old Dilworth Latta was like, nah, fam. He's like, what you're going to do is you're going to break up my monopoly over the streetcar industry. And then you're just going to sell to this big company. And then they're going to end up, strong arming me. And I'm going to have to sell to them. Which sounds like a conspiracy theory.
I like those.
But there is some evidence that this has happened in other cities. So he had like a legitimate concern. Let's see. Yeah, so he thought he would sell to James B. Duke's Mammoth Southern Power Company and allow that electric company to just take over the city.
We talked about that too.
Did we?
The electric company and James B. Duke.
Oh.
But carry on.
I don't remember.
I mean, it was a while. It might have been more of a Noda than a Plaza, but...
So such tactics were commonplace in the heyday of the trolley. And in more than one American city, new companies actually built track and operated a parallel service at a loss. So they would just build a parallel track and they would lose money, but they would also cause the other company to lose money as well. So then that company would have to sell to the large company that could afford that loss, and now they have...
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So he thought that would happen, and there was... Chatham and Duke actually had some history together. So it was just setting up for this to happen.
Okay.
Chatham and Duke shared the same attorney. They were businesses... one of Duke's business associates was one of Chatham's business associates.
Okay.
So
mutual friends, and we'll call them friends and whatnot.
Yes. So the aldermen decided that they would compromise. They would say that Chatham could build his line as long as he didn't sell or transfer to anyone.
Okay.
So it kind of like made everybody happy, but also not happy at the same time.
Yeah.
And so Chatham built his line. So Plaza Midwood has their own standalone line that starts at Central and Hawthorne.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how this worked because I didn't see that any bridges were built. So maybe you still had to cross the railroad track?
I mean, I would think so.
Yeah.
But I don't know how that worked either.
So,
Again, this was kind of a passing thing in my story, and I also sort of had these questions.
Yeah, because I think this railroad track was like at grade, so like you can't just go through it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm assuming there is still the issue of this railroad track being in the way.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, it went all the way out to the Charlotte Country Club, went up the plaza, all that jazz. 1 month later, though, Southern Power, James B. Duke's company, received a franchise from the board to allow their new Piedmont and Northern Electric Interurban to come into Charlotte via city streets. So now they're running parallel with Dilworth. Lotta and Lotta sold out to them.
Of course they did.
So he didn't want Chatham to sell out to him, but in the end he had to. So that's a pretty funny story.
Well, that's what you get, homie.
Yeah. So the Plaza Midwood was stuck with Paul Chatham's tiny streetcar. He couldn't sell to them so that they can merge.
Right.
And it makes me
that
think
should have been
like
a nullified thing of like, if you sell out, then I have free reign to do so myself, because that sucks.
Well,
that just locks them in.
People don't think of those things.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I think it's kind of weird that they call it a streetcar suburb, because it's kind of like a streetcar its own town.
Yeah.
Like a suburb.
It's typically still connected to the city, and this is disconnecting itself. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of a strange that I've seen it everywhere, but then it doesn't really seem like it was a streetcar suburb. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for years, commuters to the neighborhood had to get off the Southern Public Utilities trolley from downtown near Hawthorne and Central and transferred to a battery-powered rail car operated by Chatham's company for the trip the rest of the way out Central and up to Plaza. The inconvenience slowed an already long trip. Mm-hmm. So far from downtown, blocked by the railroad, hindered by poor trolley connections, the Plaza Midwood area was slow to develop, and it didn't really fill up until the era of easy automobile transportation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much all I got. Not that interesting, but it's kind of like 1910 drama.
I mean, yeah, that's some interesting business tactics and drama and stuff that, I mean, definitely still goes on. But it's interesting how we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot to try to save ourselves, and in the process, screw our own selves over, and then screw over the whole neighborhood by screwing ourselves over.
Yeah, so it seems like what would have been ideal was how Myers Park handled the situation. So Myers Park, further southeast than Dilworth, they wanted to be connected. So they talked to Dilworth and they subsidized it. So, they paid for it, but it's Dilworth's line,
his name,
and it continued on.
His expertise, his skill, equipment, labor, whatever, but there for the funds. Yeah. That's
and it's
crowdsourcing.
Yes.
We've talked about this.
Yeah. So it's not really clear why that didn't happen in Plaza Midwood, whether it was pride or, like Chatham seems like a guy who may have wanted his own things anyways. So I'm not sure if he wasn't willing to work with Dilworth after Dilworth said, "Nah, fam," or...
Yeah, that's a really good question, because that could have gone a whole lot of ways. It could have been just like, lack of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been, pride and no, I want to do this. I would have said lack of funds, but there is some good money in that area. It's just a connection issue. So,
yeah, it seems like Plaza Midwood's only saving grace was the Charlotte Country Club, since that was the only golf course in the city at the time. So I don't think that was built yet, so I'm not sure if the money was there quite yet, I guess. Not sure.
Yeah, and the 10-ish is...
I mean, technically it was. If Chatham could afford to build his own, then he definitely probably could have afforded to pay Dilworth to do it.
Yeah.
But...
yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
just a strange situation that put Plaza Midwood on the side burner.
Yeah. Well, if nothing else, you've given some really interesting, further developed context to my story.
Well, good. Well, I'm very happy that I did that for you.
Oh, I know. Thanks. Always here just to help me out.
Yeah.
Let me see.
What I do.
I know. But I'm going to get my stuff ready. And what I'm going to talk about is one of those houses that is a nice 15-acre estate built in the shadows of the Charlotte Country Club. And they had similar issues trying to get up into Uptown because of this dual streetcar situation. But I'm going to be talking about 3217 Maymont Place.
Never heard of her.
It is the Charles E. Barnhardt house. Bum, bum, bum. So Charles E. Barnhardt, I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory on him first. Born in 1882.
Okay.
Was the second of 11 children.
Okay.
His daddy was a very prominent figure in Cabarrus County.
Okay.
He was a merchant, a state senator, and a shareholder and director of several mills.
His daddy?
His daddy.
Okay.
Charles himself went to Clemson. He started out as a cotton buyer for mills. And we've been up in Cabarrus in here too. So we did talk about some mills and that kind of stuff too. He then in 1906 started a small shoelace factory with his daddy.
Okay.
I was like, they specifically called it a small shoelace factory. I was like, is the factory small or the shoelaces small?
Shoelaces small? That's a good question.
Hard to say. Imagine the factory was small, but you never know.
Was this a factory for ants?
Maybe. Anyway.
You know,
yes.
I don't think you know that reference, do you?
I don't think I do. Care to explain?
Zoolander.
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely don't.
Okay.
Nope. I ain't seen it.
Well.
So, 1914, made a cotton brokerage firm with Lloyd Withers. In 1927, he partnered with his youngest brother, William, to transform the Linden Cotton Mill in Davidson to Kubar Manufacturing, which I'm not going to lie, every time I read it, I just thought Fubar. But
I thought Kumar.
Oh, there you go.
Harold and Kumar.
Mm-hmm. Seen that one. And they turned it from a mill to a production of asbestos shingles.
Nice.
Yeah.
Safe.
Absolutely. That'll definitely not come back to bite them later. In 1929, he was listed as the owner of Charles E. Barnhardt and Company, cotton and rayon brokers, as well as the president of the Plaza Railway, Inc. Hey.
I don't even know what that is.
I don't either, but
Maybe
1929.
the streetcar.
Could be. 1934, he formed Barnhardt Brothers, a cotton yarn brokerage company, again with that youngest brother, William. Apparently, they were good business partners. And then some other things that he was active in. He was part of the Charlotte Second Presbyterian Church a trustee of the Presbyterian Hospital, a member at the Charlotte Country Club. He was a Shriner. He was a Mason, and actually went to a Masonic convention in Portland, Oregon, where he met his wife, Edna. And in 1929, they got married, and he was 47 and she was 44.
Did he have anything to do with the Boy Scouts?
Not that I read, but that doesn't mean he did not.
Because there is this place locally called Camp Barnhardt where you go and have Boy Scout camp.
Well, shoot.
It's in New London.
I don't know where that is.
Stanley County.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. It's John J. Barnhardt, so I guess not.
That may have been one of his sons. He had several kids.
Sure.
I want to say there was a George. No?
If you name your kid George, there's a good chance one of them was John.
George was a different family.
Oh.
I'll get there. But they did have a few kids. I did not write their names, so I don't know. Possibly. Okay. So they got married in 1929, and until they built their house in Plaza Midwood, lived in the Poplar Apartments in 4th Ward in Uptown.
Poplar, like the tree.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's a little background on Charles. And I have this nice little background on the area and some issues that were in the Plaza area.
Okay.
So all of the things that you discussed, just outside of Center City, they needed some sort of road. Well, originally they needed there to be a road, period, built from Plaza to Uptown. It was a 1.5 mile road. So that already posed, financial infrastructure burdens. And then Seaboard Railroad came in and crossed Central Avenue, so that often stopped traffic. The streetcars didn't directly connect, so they needed to create the second line, which then caused all kinds of confusion in the transfer and slowed it. Yeah, it was a cluster. And then the only thing that helped decrease that situation was the primary source of transportation starting to switch into automobiles.
True.
And that helped increase development in the Plaza Midwood area. However, then the Great Depression hit, and so that kind of killed that momentum. However, right in the middle of all that, we have good old Charles Barnhardt, who buys 4 lots in 1936 right next to Charlotte Country Club. So he got a couple bucks. And he ain't too worried about it.
Well, he opened 37 companies.
I mean, yeah.
So
he got a couple bucks.
He got some cash.
Yes. So in 1936, yep. He buys these 4 lots right near the Charlotte Country Club, which was originally called the Club Acres Subdivision. And bought those 4 lots for $7,500. Okay. Which today...
No, you did.
I did. I was so proud of myself. Today would be approximately $140,000.
Dang.
And he just bought the property, like the land. There's nothing on him yet.
That's probably still a pretty good price.
I mean, for right there. Yeah. And those 4 plots added up to 15 acres.
Yeah.
Right there in Plaza.
I mean, probably wasn't a good price back then, though. Doesn't sound like it. If there's nothing but a golf course there, not a lot of other development, maybe.
And I mean, in the middle of the Great Depression.
Yeah.
I mean.
He didn't really get a deal.
But. So he hires this man named Martin Boyer to design a house for him.
Okay.
Now, Martin Boyer, he is kind of becomes this super well-known architect for the Charlotte elite. So we may have actually mentioned him in the past, but not in detail, so I'm not positive. But
we've talked about a few architects.
We have, yes.
I believe, but.
So I think he was kind of not in collaboration with some of the other architects we've talked about, but, kind of grouped together of like how you would say like, oh, the Impressionist painters. They didn't necessarily like work together, but they were all part of the same time period and movement and stuff. So I think that's where he kind of comes in. So one of the few architects who actually remained busy during the Great Depression era it said that 85% of architects during that time period basically had zero work. And between 1929 and 1941, he designed 48 houses, let alone businesses and things that he had also worked with. So he kept himself busy and had a few bucks himself.
Nice.
And he, I believe they said it was 1933, designed and built his own entire house during this process too. So he had plenty of money to be dumping out at that point, apparently. So he originally became well known for designing the Snyder House in Myers Park in 1922. And so that is what kind of made him this favorite among Charlotte's elite. He is debatably considered the most, so I would say undebatably in a greater picture of the most, not just at the top of the list, but in that sphere, as Charlotte's most important revivalist architect.
Okay.
And so revival style architecture, I looked this up. I did good research this time, let me tell you. Is an architectural style that visually echoes the style of a previous architectural era.
It revives it?
I know. Go figure.
That's strange.
Go figure. But I mean, still, architect words, like anything that involves like interior or exterior design, people say these words, and I'm like, in theory, that makes sense, but also I don't know what that means. Like,
yeah, and like how modern's not so modern
that's exactly
anymore.
what I was going to say is like, you can say modern, but what does that mean? Because depending on when you're saying it, that could mean anything. So that's why I specifically kind of looked that up. And so basically they don't just call you a revivalist. I mean, they can, but they like as a whole, Boyer was considered a revivalist because all of his projects looked back at something else. However, it wasn't one specific style. And so specifically what Barnhardt requested of Boyer was a colonial revivalist style. Okay. And so that's what they typically pair that name with, a specific thing to tell you what they're reviving.
Okay.
But he did several different types, so he was just a revivalist.
So he's a copycat.
I mean, in theory, I reckon.
Cool.
But some other projects that he did, he was specifically called out for doing several of the S&W cafeterias.
Okay.
Yeah, which, I mean, back then were probably new and exciting and all of that. But he did ones all the way up into D.C., and none of them are still standing. So can't even try to, like, justify their superiority there. But did several of those. Supervised the moving of the Old Charlotte Federal Mint in 1933. Which was one of the first kind of active restoration or active preservation of history. Designed the city's first public housing project and several other things that he did. He was like a co-designer of one of the local schools and just all kinds of different projects.
Whatever he could get his hands on.
Kind of, yeah. But stayed busy and was one of the few that actually not only sustained, but grew during the Great Depression. So, let's talk about the house.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So we've got these 15 acres. We've got this revivalist architect. Mm-hmm. So Barnhardt wants a colonial revival style. It includes these modern and romantic elements. It is so intricate that I've got pictures that I could show you, which doesn't help anybody on the podcast, sorry. But look it up. It's pretty interesting. The like molding and everything all inside is all done with this plaster. And so there's all these intricate things like woven into it and just like carved into it and carved out of it and placed on top of it. They have really interesting detailing that actually is very matching of rooms. So I don't have it on here. There's this picture of a molding in the kitchen that just has these little like sunk in kind of holes around it. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think anything of it, and then started reading the description, and they took spoons and like imprinted the spoon across. And so those holes are actually like the spoon indent. And I was like, oh, and that's in the kitchen. Like, that's actually really clever, where it's very, like, nondescript, but very descript. Like, just the thought and ornateness that goes into it is very interesting. It had 2 big columns out front. It was very sort of classic looking. However, it also had moldings that included plaster of cotton mill spindles, which was actually really interesting because of his, you know, kind of textile background. However, there were also in the Landmark Commission's report on it, they claimed flamboyant architectural elements. So it's this really interesting build where the front is very classic, it's revivalist, it's colonial, it's very uppity, has the wrong connotation, but just socially acceptable and presentable. And then you get to the backside and it's like chaos comparatively. There's all of these like square pegs almost like up the entire side of the wall, even around the columns. And then there's all this ornate ironworking and this like stone patio, like all kinds of things that don't match the architectural style. And so it goes all over. And so you've got this very modern backside that has classical, romantic and whimsical elements going along there. So they still have, I believe it's at UNC that they have these on file, but they have the original drawings that he made for the designs for this home. And so the original plans are dated September of 1937 and revisions in December of 1937. So they believe that the house began construction somewhere in that time period. And May of 1938, Edna and Charles come out. House is still under construction. They're checking it all out, checking out the property. She's hanging out inside looking at some things, and he goes out to check out. There's a little like pond in the like sort of a little river stream thing, and there's a dam and a pond.
And he was murdered.
And he dies. His body is found
by
in
murder.
the lake. I mean, we can make the conspiracy theory because I tried really hard to make a conspiracy theory out of it. And you could definitely call for one.
So he died in the lake or died and then in the lake?
So he went to go like inspect the grounds, and a worker on site found his body in the lake.
Okay.
So what they believe happened was there were like fishing nets up on the dam. And so they believe he got caught in one, tripped, and fell into the water.
And drowned.
But nobody knows.
He was murdered.
I really tried for a conspiracy theory there. So that unfortunate business happens. The house isn't even built yet.
Could have been the asbestos.
Might could have been.
Knocked him out right there. Died before he hit the water.
You're not wrong. So the house gets completed, and upon completion in 1938, the estimated value is $50,000.
Did you do another?
Which today means that it would be about $910,000.
Did you look up the Zestimate? The Zillow estimate?
I did not.
Is it still there? The house?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you other things.
Okay.
That have to do with the money and what it's appraised at.
Okay.
So in 1938, the house is completed. Estimated value at that time of about $50,000. However, due to the trauma of Charles's death, Edna never moves in. So she stays at the Poplar Apartments in 4th Ward till her last days.
Dang.
So 1938 is when the house is completed. And it stays vacant. There is some fleeting reports of an Italian cotton broker that like shortly kind of rents it from
he
her.
Airbnb'd it.
Kind of.
Yeah.
For like a brief period in there. But it stays fully vacant until 1944. Then we have the Hollingsworth couple, Walter and Jenny. They purchased the home from Edna. So 6 years later. They buy the house, and it's mostly irrelevant. I just thought this was funny, so I wanted to pass it on. Hollingsworth was a Charlotte businessman involved with the Comptometer Company, and read this offline, and in parentheses after that it says adding machines. So fancy calculators or abacuses, perhaps.
Okay.
Adding machines.
Okay.
And then it says, and the Charlotte Music Company, and then it says jukeboxes and phonographs. But they were active real estate owners. They lived in that house for 4 years and then sold it to George and Elizabeth Crooks Kramer.
Crooks Kramer?
Yes. And that's where I got that George from. And I was like, nope, I'm wrong. Different family. So 48, we're now 10 years after it was completed. It sells to this other family, George and Elizabeth. George dies in 1995. His wife, Elizabeth, dies in 2006. They have a few kids. The kids kind of live in the house too, with their families. So that house stays in the family until 2016 when they sell it off. Surprisingly, they made almost zero significant changes to the house. So looking at photographs of it now and of the plans that Boyer originally drew up, they match perfectly. It's really interesting to look at the side by side of. They said the biggest change that they made to the like quote integrity of the house was they installed carpets. Like structurally speaking, they didn't change anything, which is really impressive and keeps it in really incredible condition. So 2006, I didn't directly read this, but I can only assume that they sold it directly to this set of developers, because in 2017, that 15-acre lot was then split into 14 lots for homes, and leaving that house on a 1-acre plot. It's like 1.05 acres. And it was almost demolished because there was a zoning issue where they needed a second like connecting street, and it had to run right through that plot. And so then that's when the Historic Landmarks Committee got involved and said, "Whoa, slow down, please." And they like talked to them and worked around redesigning how they wanted to split up those 40 lots and everything. And so at that point, they reworked it so they didn't have to tear the house down or put a road right there. And then the Landmarks Committee in 2017 purchased that property from, I would assume then, this developing company. So they saved the house from it, sort of cleaned it up, like just, took out the major issue stuff. And then it has been on the market for over 2 years with an original appraisal point of $1.9 million in 2016.
Okay.
So
doubled in value, essentially.
Yeah. And that comes with the historical context or historical nature and all of that as well. So it was officially became a historic landmark in late 2017. Mm-hmm. And one question I did have was the Landmark Commission report says 6,500 square feet of livable space, where you can see a real estate listing that says 5,600 square feet. And so I'm not sure if there was a typo and something got superimposed. Yeah. Or there were also reports of them having, servants' quarters and all of that kind of sort of like hidden space, if you will. So I'm not sure if maybe one of them chose to include that and one chose not to. I'm not really sure. Could go either way, but just something to throw out there, I guess. So just recently, we had, grandfather? Is that what it's called?
Grandfather. That is a word.
Yes, that is a word. Okay, so Grandfather Homes is a company that just recently purchased that property from the Landmarks Commission.
Okay.
And so right now it's in this development called Kramer's Pond. So the developing company that built these 40 lots around it off of the rest of the 15 acres did at least kind of pay homage, not to the Barnhardts who originally built it, but to the Kramers who lived there for the majority of the time and called it Kramer's Pond. And
the pond that
he died in, yeah.
Okay.
Murder.
Okay.
That Barnhardt died in, yes. So Grandfather Homes just recently purchased it, and the president of that company, Matt Ewers, hopefully I'm not saying that wrong. Probably am. Sorry.
Matt, if you're there, sorry.
My bad. He is the president of that company, and his family is going to move into that residence. So they said that they're going to work on renovations, and the family will be ready to move in fall of 2020. So just a year away, give or take. And their Landmarks Commission is actually very excited about this because basically they have to approve all of the renovations and everything. There has to be a big discussion about it to make sure nothing gets, as a historical landmark, that nothing gets too out of context, I guess. But they're very excited because generally, because it's being redeveloped as a single family residence again, and the single family the family that is going to be in residence is actually in charge of the construction. So all around, it's expected that much greater care will be taken of the property and that it will be less kind of just like, oh, well, this is some person's whatever, I don't care, and just, you know, throw some paint on the wall, make it look pretty, even though maybe structurally, whatever. But, and so Matt seems very excited. He said that it was very clear that it was built for a textile/industrial family, that you could see that it was, even though as a home, it was almost built like it was a mill. And we even said there were all of these original, like mill spindles and things in the, but he said the way the flooring was constructed and everything else was super reminiscent to the mills in that time period. So that's kind of a cool historical.
Yeah, he could probably tell he owned an asbestos company too, and he should probably get that out there.
Yeah, change the shingles out, man. But their first meeting for the restoration approvals actually happened about a week ago. So they may be underway with that. He said he's planning to bring back a lot of the elements that he knew went into it originally that weren't necessarily removed, but, you know, have just faded over time, and he just wants to literally restore them as opposed to changing them. So that's pretty cool. And that's kind of it on the historical side. I think it was really interesting that it is now brought up, you know, current context, it's being redeveloped and all of that. But my biggest interesting tidbit, I guess, from all of this was just kind of this commentary on humanity in general, of this home having this this front facade that was like it had this very public facade on the front and then this very private facade that was super different on the back.
It's a mullet home.
I mean, kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of. But I just thought that was a really good commentary on our humanity, that we have this like very public and private kind of aspects to each of us, and how the front was this revivalist style, and so it was very reflective of kind of this generation that came before it, and how often as people we tend to reflect or mimic the people who came before us, or at least present ourselves in ways that kind of play off of the generation that came before us. And then on the backside was where it was more ornate and flamboyant and whimsical, as all these descriptors have said. And that's kind of like our internal selves, where we don't necessarily let people see of just, you know, here's all the things that I just want to do and be creative and be different and all this stuff, but we tend to hide that. And I think as a society, we've gotten way better about just laying it all out there. But I just thought that, especially given the time period, it was a very kind of telling of Charles and Edna's maybe personality, and just an interesting commentary of the society that they lived in, of how they had to absolutely present this very honoring, structured colonial facade, and then we're able to just like, okay, now we're out back, and now we can just really let go and be the people we want to be, and be different, and be what other people would consider weird and strange and all this stuff. And I just thought it was an interesting commentary.
Yeah, but that lifestyle leads you to die by asbestos in a pond.
You're not wrong.
So watch out.
Yeah. But I just thought it was interesting. Thought it was cool. And definitely, I mean, we'll link below some of the pictures and stuff, but it's pretty cool. And I hope they do. Believe they will do a great job with it. And it would be really cool if they decided to post some pictures themselves of it once they got it finished up, because I think it'll look pretty cool when he's done with it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Word.
The Plaza.
There it is again for the 18th time.
Oh yeah.
College football starts Saturday.
Nuh-uh.
Yep. So that's pretty interesting.
Sure
I like
is.
football.
Me too.
I think it's Miami against Florida. Saturday. Should be a good one. We are actually going to do a fantasy football league.
Get it.
12 teams. 2 of them are going to be us. So we need 10 more people. We may have some prizes for the winner of the league.
Maybe.
But
Maybe.
we're going to work that out as we go. So
I think it's safe to say there will be prizes. It's just specifically
what it'll be.
We have ideas what we want it to be.
Yeah.
We got to have a few conversations with some people, and then we'll let those be known when we can.
Yeah.
But prizes to come.
But 12 team, probably a PPR league. If you don't know what that is, you probably won't win. But I think what we're going to do, have people email us why they think they should be one of the 10.
Because the idea is, I know we have at least a solid 2 listeners.
Yeah.
But hopefully we have a few more. And as we start posting about this on social media, you know, you get a lot more people involved, and there's only 10 spots. So we want to make sure that we get the right people in here. So why should we choose you to be eligible to win some fabulous prizes in our football league?
You can email that to, we can do podcast at.
We can do that.
So podcast
at
VanGo Creative.
VanGo Creative.
It's also along.
If you're watching, it's right here.
This space.
If you're listening,
it is in the description.
Yes.
So do that if you like football, which means you're American.
Word.
And yeah, it should be fun. You're gonna lose, but that's cool.
Oh, what happens?
I probably will lose too.
I was gonna say, what happens if we're in the top 2? Do we like?
We get the prize.
No.
Yeah.
I think we have to like defer it.
Nope. You snooze, if you lose, you lose.
So tell us how bad you want to beat Drew, so that you can talk smack when you do.
Yeah. I always lose.
I almost exclusively come in second, where I have traditionally been in first up until playoffs, and I like kill it, and then I lose in one playoffs game, and it's just downhill from there.
Yeah.
But I kill it up until then.
But it'll be fun. We'll talk smack. Maybe meet up, watch some football games or something.
Yeah.
Have a good time. But
we can do like cheesy promo codes where it's like, mention you listen to this podcast and we'll buy you a beer.
Yeah, we can do that.
But that's all. Be on the lookout for that. Shoot us an email, podcast at VanGo Creative. Tell us why you should be part of our fantasy league, and we will start getting that set up here very soon. And we will see you guys all next week.
Check you later.
Bye.